What's up? What's up? What's up, Ian?
What's up, man?
Well, not too much, not too much. Welcome to REI Madness. Hopefully everyone's as excited as Ian and myself are to get started. We're kicking off REI Madness today. Couldn't be more excited. We're going to be chatting with Team Realtors. They're going to hop on here in a second. And, personally, and I know Ian as well, I love chatting with experienced realtors, and especially right now because, number one, they're always on the cutting edge of what's going on in the market, and they're seeing things firsthand related to buying, selling, leasing, things like that. But also, as we all know, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. It's not necessarily uncertainty in a bad way, but there's just, at least personally, I see a lot of conflicting and then just weird things that have been going on recently, especially since kind of COVID hit about 10 months ago. So we're going to get a really good perspective from realtors and brokers to see what they're actually seeing out there. And also, we're going to be chatting with residential and commercial realtors and brokers on this panel. So that'll really give us a good overview of what they're seeing and what's happening on both sides.
Yeah, man. No, it's definitely exciting to bring these three guys in because we've worked with all three of them on deals. So it's exciting to have them come in and actually see what they're seeing, what they saw over the 2020 and what they're going to see in 2021, and how you can make yourself potentially a better buyer or a better client, because that is something that we're going to bring up. But before we bring the guys on, just real quick, REI Madness is a totally free event. We'll be broadcasting every day, a few times a day. But if you guys find any value in this, go check out reimadness.com. You'll be able to find the bios of the speakers. I think, there we go. We do have a few sponsors, the Breeden Group, Storage Rebellion, Studio A Staging. They were gracious enough to donate money to the Metro Burn Foundation, and that's what we're raising funds for. So if you get any value out of this, feel free to just head over to reimadness.com and you can rewatch this, or you can make a donation, or you can find out more and get contact information on these guys. Enough of us. It's about the guys that are the presenters. Get me off this screen. Bring the boys in. Let's introduce them. And by the way, we're doing Team Realtors, so there's some of the best looking guys we're going to have all week and best dressed. Anyway, so real quick, hey guys, we got RJ, Jim, and Andrew. If you guys want to introduce yourself real quick, who you are, where you're from, and then we'll jump right into it. RJ, you want to go first?
Hi guys, my name is RJ Breeden with the Breeden Group of Berkshire Hathaway. We buy and sell homes in the Baltimore metro area when it comes to representing buyers and sellers, and it's a pleasure to have me on today. Thank you.
Chivers?
Good morning, gentlemen. Name's Jim Chivers. I'm with Gold & Company Commercial Real Estate, originally from Minnesota, but lived here in Locust Point for about 4 or 5 years, and also been here in Baltimore since 2000.
And Andrew?
All right, excited to be here. Andrew Unden. I'm with the Sure Group of Berkshire Hathaway, and we help over 500 families every year buy and sell. And we work with a ton of investors and builders, and eager to provide whatever value we can for the audience today.
Nice. Appreciate it. So let's start off with our first question. Now, I think in general, between Ian and I, we'll probably switch off of who's probably the best answer. But I think this is a broad enough question that all three of you guys can help with. We obviously don't have a crystal ball, but where do you kind of see the outlook being for 2021? Like compared to where we're at now, we're early in the year. Where, again, no crystal ball, but where would you guess things will kind of head towards, throughout this year into the summer, towards the end of the year? Jim can talk about the commercial side, and RJ and Andrew can jump in on the residential side. Whichever one wants to go first. Andrew, maybe if you want to go first, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think we're going to see, this low inventory market continue, and as inventory does come on the market, it's going to continue to get gobbled up at a rapid pace. So the interest rates are going to remain low. The job market's strong. The economy is strong. I think that we got rid of some of this turbulence with the political landscape. This market is going to be a stronger market than we've ever seen before in terms of being a seller. It's tough out there for a buyer. You're looking at houses, you're losing offers. For all the buyers out there, you have to get your ducks in a row now. If you're not coming in there guns blazing, you're going to lose. Every house we sold, look, we're settling 2 houses a day every day. I see it every day. You're going to be competing with 4, 5, 6 offers. So you need to have your stuff together. And as a seller, by golly, best time ever to buy. One caveat before I jump it over to RJ is you hear some rumblings about this foreclosure wave's going to come. Hey, keep some money on the sidelines. I don't see that happening. I just don't. I think this new administration is going to be bailing people out. Banks don't want to hold these assets. They don't have to hold them. It's so easy to dump them right now if you get them looking good. So I wouldn't be holding out for any foreclosure crisis. I'd get in the game and make it happen. Market's great.
Yeah, and I mean, I think related to the foreclosure crisis, there can't be a foreclosure crisis. It can't really even foreclose. You can't even evict. I mean, it's across the board. So, and we all know that at least if you're in Maryland, it depends on what state or jurisdiction you're in. I mean, it's not a quick process, right? It's not going to be like, hey, I'm in default, and then the next month it's cured. And good points related to interest rates kind of staying low, and who knows where kind of that goes. And it's just a weird spot right now because there's just a lack of inventory. I'm assuming the majority of this occurred obviously because of the cheap interest rate and the lack of inventory, right? I mean, if you look at most subdivisions or most areas of a particular town, if they're used to having so many houses, I mean, most subdivisions have 0 houses. And as soon as one pops up, it's going to sell. But I would guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody here, that there's got to be a cap to that, right? It gets to the point that affordability comes in, and it's like, listen, I can't, first-time home buyers, there won't be housing for first-time home buyers in a lot of neighborhoods, right? It just gets to a point that it's just lack of affordability. So, but I think I probably agree with you as well related to that. This train is going to continue. What's your thoughts on that, RJ?
I'm going to agree with Andrew. I mean, everything that we're listing right now is going multiple offer situation, low days on market. And I'm going to tell you, if the buyer's agent is creative, that's what's getting the deal done. I mean, I had a property the other day. They came in, buyers paying all transfer and recordation charges. And on top of that, in the event that the property under appraises, the buyer is willing to pay $10,000 out of pocket on top of the appraised value. I mean, from a standpoint of my seller, I advised them, like, this is a no-brainer. Like, you got to take this offer because there's a tremendous amount of value there. It's probably about a $25,000 value for the seller when it comes to that. So when it comes to, obviously, forecasting 2021, inventory is low. It's driving the market. It's supply and demand. Me and Andrew see it daily. We're communicating with buyers agents. We're communicating with other professionals in the industry. And, when it comes to the market, just if you're considering selling your house, if you're an investor in the market, you're getting top dollar at this point. You really are getting top dollar. The challenging thing is on the acquisition side, you're also probably paying a little bit more than market right now. Yeah. So it's kind of relative.
Yeah, and I think it's scary. I think it's scary for folks because they don't exactly know. Hey, I mean, you're never going to time the market right.
Right.
It's not going to happen. And not that I really want to compare this to like Bitcoin, but like, I mean, look what happened pre-COVID on that, and look at where that is now. And some people kick themselves in the head, but at the same time, there's also signs of what happened, 07, 08, of multiple offers over and over and over and over and over, and then eventually just like all of a sudden runs out of steam, and then overnight it's
right. The acquisition side continues to, I say, increase, right? From an investor side of things, prices are continuing to increase. Now the after rehab value, I'm going to tell you, is increasing, but in the event that you get an FHA buyer or a VA buyer and the property under appraises, it's going to stick for 180 days. So at that point, then you have to either put it back on the market and get a conventional offer, or decide what's important to your investor or your seller. So it's challenging. One bad apple could ruin a deal because you overpaid on the front end, and the back end didn't kind of trail with it.
Right. Fair. Yeah, those are all good. Those are all good points, Jim. Now you're sandwiched between the two single family guys, and I'm sure it's driving you up a wall. But what are you seeing in the commercial world for 2021? And for those that don't know it, it's not necessarily different. It's just a little different how commercial and single family real estate transacts. But what are you seeing in the marketplace for 2021?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm honored to be your guys' guest. Thanks for having me. Andrew, good to see you. RJ, looking good. Great to see you guys too. And in the commercial world, the commercial real estate sectors were not impacted equally. I mean, we're going to see some sectors recover faster than others. And in the industrial side, the pandemic has acted more of a trend accelerator, I think, because of e-commerce. And with the e-commerce world, my wife's guilty of it. I think I have an Amazon box coming to my front door every day. So I've got recycling that needs some taking advantage of here. But the e-commerce world, you have that. Then you have the fleet maintenance facilities, and you have the trucking companies that need to store their land. And so that's kind of been a strong point here in 20, and we're going to see it further into 2021. The office market, working home isn't for everyone. Not for me. I think for real estate teams and other office users out there, many employees still crave the social interaction of bouncing ideas off each other and the face-to-face meetings. So I think the office market will be coming back slowly here in 2021. The biggest one that got hit of all was the retail sector and the entertainment, food, hospitality business. And RJ, I know we talked about this earlier before our broadcast here, but how great is it to see Jimmy's Seafood kind of stepping up and helping some of these other mom and pop retail stores? There's a great video, Illusions, here in Federal Hill. If you guys get a chance, pull it up. It's the owner of Illusions. He's kind of a magic show here in Federal Hill, and he's really been hit hard, kind of the entertainment retail sector. And some business owners have stepped up to help them. However, parts of the retail sector have been very successful. It took me about 6 weeks to get a dishwasher. The building supply stores are very busy. The furniture stores are busy. So we're going to start to see parts of the retail sector, experiencing slow growth until widespread vaccination is in place. But for this year, I think industrial is still the strong suit.
Yeah, no, and you're supposed to say that office space is roaring back, and if you need office space, check out Gaslight Square. That's my shameless plug for the day. Hey, guys, real quick, before we go any further, this show is 100% interactive. Please post questions, comments, concerns, whatever you guys got. We're here to answer questions for you, and these guys are here to bring value for you. As you can see, they're already dropping bombs left and right. So let's move a little bit forward. We know where 2021 is going, right? I guess, what do you guys would say for 2021? Like, for the two single family guys, let's go with you guys first, RJ or Andrew. What's like a must have if you're trying to flip a house? Like, what should you do in 2021 that's like the in thing to do right now? I know, RJ, you got a little unfair advantage with Studio A staging behind you, so I'll let Andrew go first and you can come in behind there.
Yeah, I mean, both RJ and I work with a lot of investors, and RJ does a great job. But take this with a grain of salt or not, but it's true. The most important thing that these builders are going to have, even in a low inventory environment, when, hey, it's not that hard to sell my house, there's a bunch of offers, you're going to need an agent who can squeeze every penny out of this house for you. Guys like RJ, guys like myself, but it's like, hey, we know you have 10 offers. How are we going to net you every penny in the deal? And that's, like RJ said, transfer recordation. There's a lot of weird things you can play with in these offers that are uncommon in the past that are going to start being more common. Waiving the appraisal, getting the right loan, knowing the lender, stuff like that. So I think that the number one thing these investors need to have is an agent who knows their way around the block, who can get every penny out of it. And then, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's pretty much it. And then the rest of it's stuff you guys heard a million times. You can get on HGTV or YouTube. You got to have the neutral colors, the nice trim. Staging always helps. Studio A staging is the best in the greater Baltimore and DC market for the value. So those are obvious things, but the not so obvious thing is still takes a pro. It still takes a guy who's going to go out there and crack a skull for you on the seller side. When we represent a seller, I'm looking to clobber somebody for you. The only way you're going to use me again is if I stuff money in your pockets and you say nice things about me on the internet. And that's how we've gotten all this builder business in Canton, Federal Hill, Locust Point over the days. It's like, look, we're going to get you the best number. We're going to get you more eyeballs on the house. We're going to do more media, even though you don't have to. I'm going to blast so many ads across Facebook, Instagram, Google, LinkedIn. You already have 3 offers. I don't care, because I'm going to blast this so hard that we're going to just raise this price up to a level where we're maxing out.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And for the most part, by doing so, it's a good selling feature to be like, listen, I'm going to pay for myself, right? Like, you could do this yourself and potentially get 200. I'm going to get you 215, right? I'm going to take my commission out of that. You're still going to net higher. So it's a no-brainer.
And real quick, before we bounce over to RJ, because RJ, I want you to comment a little more on like what houses maybe should look like, neutral colors and those types of things. But real quick, Jim, do you want to, Andrew was talking about like broker's fees and those types of things. How does commercial like differ in that little sense there before we get too far off that topic of like, you get a lot of transactions where you're representing both sides. Like, what do you see on that aspect? Is there something that buyers or sellers could do to help increase their value or become a better buyer or a better seller?
Well, for example, I'm going to use you, Ian, as an example here for the 2 deals that we did work on. Actually, 3 deals we worked on 600 West Patapsco. I don't know if you remember that deal. You saw the property, and it was an off-market deal, right? And we created a relationship with the seller. It was about a 14,000 square foot kind of single-story industrial building, and we told the seller, hey, we're interested. We want to make an offer. And you saw the value in the industrial property at the time. You did your homework, and you saw there was a little bit of land there, and there's a demand for industrial, still is. So we made an offer, and we asked the seller to contribute to our commission, and she did. However, our fee is paid from the seller 95% of the time. Sometimes we do go after the buyer or the buyers to pay our fee, because at that point, the building on 600 West Patapsco we were chasing and was unofficially in the market. So we didn't really understand her motivation. And if the commission was going to get in the way, we were going to lean on you a little bit to pay the fee. I haven't told you that, but now I do. So again, just going back to the fees, we do work both sides on the deal, and 95% of the time, 90% of the time, it's paid by the seller.
Nice. Yeah, no, it was actually a cool deal, and it worked out. And I think by doing that, it helped out. And I think it helps when you're a creative buyer or you're a creative seller, and you can work through these different things. You don't have to stay to the box, which sometimes the single family guys do get stuck in. But it sounds like Andrew and RJ, which I do know personally, can work through that box. RJ, I noticed your background, best dressed guy here. Let's talk about, like, what are some things in a 2021 flip that you need? Like, are gray colors still in? What type of appliance packages are we looking at? Like, what's something if someone wants to provide a really quality house to bring to market to flip?
So obviously neutral colors are still in, right? But I'm going to kind of piggyback on Andrew yet again. The buying process, you got to hire a professional, first of all, hands down, hire a professional. This is what we do full time, every single day. We understand the market. There is tremendous amount of value to hire a professional. Secondly, the buying process starts when the home buyer or the potential home buyer pulls up into the neighborhood and stops the car in front of the house. First 60 seconds, right? So I have all my sellers maybe go out and clean the sidewalk up, blow the leaves down the street, bag the leaves up, whatever that may be. And then they walk into the house, and it needs to be staged. I get it, homes are selling quickly, but I also understand and see it on a daily basis, the value of staging. And then with that being said, the buyer connects. When they walk in the door, it feels like home. When the property is staged, they connect to the house. It's not a vacant, cold feeling. We're in the middle of January or the end of January right now. Homes are cold. They're dark when you walk in. It gets dark early, quicker in the evenings. So when you turn on the lights and that property is staged, it looks absolutely amazing. The buyers fall in love. Now, when it comes to separating yourself in the industry, I think, look, you can get creative on tile choices. You can get creative with backsplashes. You could also get creative with, your quartz choices or your granite inside on the kitchen. But a lot of these properties are pretty standard when it comes to the renovation and the quality of it. When you get into the higher price point homes, that allows you to get a little bit more creative on your light fixtures, your choices in the bathrooms, your cabinet colors and things like that. But you want your property to stand out. As an investor, you want to do things creative, but don't go too far off the spectrum, if I must say, but have a one or two wow factors, the simple things, the culvert ceilings, So I see that going a long way, because if a buyer's agent is showing a house to a potential buyer and they're showing 4 or 5 or 6 houses that evening or during the day, you want your property to stand out over, the other 4 or 5 that they may be seeing.
Makes sense. Quick question from Susan. We kind of talked about this earlier, but are we looking at a lot of foreclosures, tax auctions once things open up, maybe second or third quarter? What are your thoughts? pretty much what we discussed earlier was just don't see it happening that quickly. Interest rates are still low. There's just very low inventory, so things are still getting gobbled up very, very quickly. And it takes time before, foreclosures will cycle through and things like that. The one thing, that Ian and I have talked about is what happens with distressed landlords that have non-Section 8 tenants in place, right? That they're not getting their rent in from retail tenants, right? A lot of Section 8 landlords haven't had many issues. And to be honest, it seems like a lot of retail landlords, thinking retail tenants haven't really either, but I'm certain that at some point that's going to come. So who knows if there's a kind of demand or a surge to unload rental properties in the near future. Question, we can start with Andrew on this one if we want. What is, let me think of a good way to phrase this. What's a good way to stand out as an investor to buy maybe not necessarily a distressed listing, but not a fully renovated listing that you may have? I mean, obviously, deals are hard to come by for real estate investors. We're actually doing some interviews with the wholesaling team later today, so I'm looking forward to that to see how they're finding some dirt cheap deals. But there's just a lot of real estate investors that have not followed the correct formula of finding deals, right? They're not canvassing, they're not doing direct mail, they're not doing online digital advertising. They've always been reliant on MLS deals, which is challenging for them, especially right now. There's just not a lot of margin. But let's say you have an opportunity that you're not going to sell to a retail homeowner. What can an investor do to stand out to potentially purchase it?
Well, these investors, almost all the deals we get are always off the MLS. We very rarely get investor quality deals on the MLS. So that ship has kind of always sailed for us.
That's right.
The one thing that if I'm an investor, I'm looking at it, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, how am I making a compelling offer to these people? Why would they want to work with me? If you don't have some really key bullet points under that header, why would they want to work with me? You're going to get chewed up and spit out. Because everybody wants these properties. So the first one is obviously you have to have your financing in check. You got to be writing these things cash. No one's going to mess around with any type of stipulations in there. So you got to get your cash right. I know a lot of the audience probably uses hard money, but it operates like cash. So to the seller, you just write that offer as cash. And B, what I think a lot of people don't realize is, in this business, you get paid in direct proportion to the information you gather, not the information you give. So you really got to be asking questions, getting as much information as possible from the seller, from whoever you're trying to acquire the property from, so you can give them what they want and you can get what you want. But you don't know. Sometimes it's not just the number, it's the time frame. It's what are you going to do with the property? It's, can I leave all my shit here? How easy are you going to make it? Don't assume, and this goes for real estate, lending, everything, every team of interview. You cannot assume you know what people want. You have to get really good at asking questions and gathering information. And what we find all the time is we just want to go and spew it all out. Hey, I'm cash. I'll close in 15 days. You can leave your stuff here, blah, 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 blah. And you know what? They don't care half the time. So you got to meet them where they are. You got to slow down and just execute. So, I'm not sure that answers the questions. One last thing that RJ was talking about. If I walk into another rehab and I see one of these showers that doesn't have the ceramic base, it just drives me crazy. Like, can we get frameless glass across all price points? The frame and then the base, I just want to blow my head off. But okay.
Yeah, we always like to look at that type of stuff. We're always like, how do you do all this, but then don't do this one thing? But you do bring up a really good point. Like especially in single family, you're looking for that drama point, and I'm sure we're going to get into that with team wholesalers later, of finding that drama point, finding that pain point. I don't want to say exploit it, but you're solving someone else's issue, right? Like that's what it comes down to. And you brought up a good point about gathering information and make the best decision you can. And with the information you have, you can go out and execute. For Jim, it's a little bit different in the commercial world. You have a thing called a study period. And that's when, in the single family world, you're kind of gathering up front and you're firing contracts, and it's a little more rigid versus Jim, what you do. What is a study period, and what does that look like for someone who wants to be a commercial buyer and how do you use that to your advantage, that study period of time?
Yeah, no problem. And Jason, I want to piggyback off your question a little bit too, the question of how you're separating yourself as investors. And I think one big thing, and it's important for people that are getting involved early in the game, is creating a track record of getting deals done. If you're the type that puts a lot of stuff under contract and walks away from the deals, guys like Andrew, guys like RJ, you're not going to pick up your phone. So if you start creating a track record of getting deals done, that's going to get Andrew's attention. That's going to get RJ's attention. That's going to get my attention a little bit more. Ian, when you hit me up 12 years ago for a Craigslist ad for $25 to hang up a banner, I didn't take you seriously then. Now we're selling you Gaslight Square and a couple other industrial buildings, and so you've created that track record of getting deals done. And in the commercial real estate transaction, Ian, the letter of intent. It's a non-binding agreement that has important business terms on there, which one thing is near and dear to everyone's heart is the purchase price. Then you have a study period. Typically like you have a 60-day study period and then probably settle 30 days after the study period. But it's on the buyer to do their own due diligence in a commercial real estate transaction. I think in residential, you're protected by a lot of laws and regulations. But in commercial, it's on you. You got to do your survey. You have to do your environmental. The bank you're probably using is going to handle the appraisal, so that's taken care of. You need to lean on third-party consultants. You want your roofer to come in and make sure the roof is okay. And Ian, Gaslight Square, we just completed that end of last year. You had a $250,000 cooling tower that's on site. So you want a specialized contractor to come in to inspect that. So the letter of intent kind of lays all that out. And when people have a letter of intent, they think they have a deal. That technically, no. It's a non-binding contract. So you still want to have that sense of urgency to get to the purchase and sales agreement, but the letter of intent, the LOI, lays out those important terms.
Yeah. And definitely, because a lot of people do think, I put an LOI out, so I get this thing under contract. But, it's kind of similar. RJ, maybe you can comment to this. Is like when you get multiple offers, Jim might get multiple letter of intents, and then they move to a contract. And like when we bought our 76-unit apartment building, the guy was under a letter of intent. Then he got real cute after the letter of intent and didn't follow what he said he was going to do in that. And we just did a little bit of follow-up, and we wound up with that building, right? Now, RJ, how do you handle multiple offers up front from investor buyers? I'm not talking about the back end. Obviously, that's, conventional, and that we could talk about that in a second. But how do you handle multiple offers for like an investor sale? Like, kind of related to how do you set yourself aside, but how are you looking at it from your side? Like, what do you see and what helps you cultivate a decision for your seller?
All right. So I would just want to take one step back and go from how are we getting investors properties, right?
Right.
And what I think Jim said is, it's all about the relationships that you create, right? This industry is a very small knit, very tight industry. You've got to have credibility as an investor in the arena of acquiring, holding rentals. If you put something under contract, fulfill the contract. And in this market, we don't have time to chase you for your proof of funds, your earnest money deposit, things like that. So you need to have your ducks in a row, and you need to have credibility in the industry or establish good credibility in the industry with realtors, whether it's me, Andrew, or Jim. Like, just fulfill what you set out to do. So I think that goes a long way. And it's also creating relationships with other real estate partners in the industry, whether it's lenders, other realtors. That goes a long way. So when I call Andrew, I'm like, hey, Andrew, I potentially have a buyer on ABC Street. Me and Andrew have a great working relation. And it goes a long way. And it's just not me and Andrew. It's hundreds of other realtors in the Baltimore metro area. So I think that is really key when identifying and getting properties for the investors in and around the area. Now, when it comes to a multiple offer situation, I outline everything and I present it to the seller. But also when I meet with my sellers, I ask them a very direct question. I say, what's important to you? And I get lots of different answers, but a couple of them are, is it top dollar? Is it low days on market? Or is it a kind of a combination of both? And when I ask that question, I just sit back and listen. And in doing so, they're going to express to you what's important to them. And everybody's motives are different when selling a house. So by taking that in, and then in a multiple offer situation, it becomes, okay, this is the cleanest, no inspections, top dollar, high earnest money deposit. And or maybe somebody's trying to go after, top dollar. So it doesn't matter if they need inspections or anything.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think a good takeaway for everybody watching or listening, however you're consuming this, is if Andrew calls you and he says he has a buyer or vice versa, it's real, right? Because he's not going to call you if it's not. And the investor community, the investor community is a small community. And between Baltimore area, the DC area, or wherever you're located, even though some of those are big major markets, it's still small. Everybody knows each other.
Right.
You used to show up with some schmo, unprepared, proof of funds, whatever the case is, people aren't going to take you seriously. And I'm sure Jim can attest that even more, because that's even a smaller niche. And it's like, what is this stuff? And that kind of leads us a little bit to liquidity kind of in the marketplace right now. And I think for the most part, everyone's aware that in the residential space that it's pretty easy to get capital right now. For anyone that's for the most part qualified, interest rates are low. The bank wants to lend. There's a lot of different funding sources between hard money, private lenders, institutional backed hard money lenders right now. So, anyone that has a halfway decent credit and a little bit of their own capital is going to get funding. Jim, on the commercial world, how's the liquidity out there? Are banks lending? And I know not necessarily as a whole, but we talked about kind of retail at the beginning. And I've heard some stories that some retail, maybe even office, that some banks have been a little bit shy. We actually just recently did an office building hard money loan because, very, very qualified borrower. They had 35% or something to put down, and their banks would give them a hard time because they were nervous because it was a vacant office building or office suite. It's a 2-unit office type of situation, and I'm happy to fund that. They had a lot of good financials, things like that. So where have you seen it right now? Like, how are interest rates now kind of in the commercial world? And are banks on the right project? Are banks available to lend?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, you know this field better than anyone with the financial and lending world. But most of the time, I would say 2020, a lot of our deals were owner users. A lot of industrial guys, a lot of underground utility companies. Banks are bending over backwards for owner user deals. You have a need for the real estate, and you have an operating business to run your business out of for the real estate. So still, we have banks all the time calling us, want to take us out to lunch. I love to eat, so I'm going to take advantage of that. And they want to tap into the owner user market, and very, very aggressive to make those deals. Investors, as you said, Jason, if you're an investor and you're buying an office building, the bank's going to do the underwriting a little bit more, looking at the leases, how strong are the tenants. They might require a little bit more down, maybe 25, 30% down from the buyer. So the investor deals, banks are taking a little bit of harder look at. But again, going back to the owner user deals, still making it happen, and banks are bending over backwards to make them happen right now.
Good to know. Yeah, it's always weird with commercial lenders about what they look at on some of these things. And I understand the financial component of it, but I couldn't tell you over the years how many super low LTV bridge loans we've done on just vacant commercial buildings because banks just won't touch it. It seems. It's crazy to me. They rather do higher leverage that they know are meeting their debt service coverage requirements and things like that. And over the years, it's like, hey, someone's buying a property for $500,000, they need like $100,000, and they can't get a bank to give it to them. And it's nuts, but that works.
Jim might be able to tell us. I would assume right now it's probably hard to get a restaurant loan, right? Like until there's more stuff that's getting open. Office spaces, the one we just did, we even got underwrote pretty hard of how you guys are going to combat what's going on with coronavirus. But if you have, and obviously when we get to team lenders on Thursday, we're going to discuss, you got to be able to pitch your story, right? The same way these realtors and brokers, sorry, Jim, are able to pitch their story to the buyers and sellers, right? Like you have to have a complete business package. To follow up with that question, Andrew, what are you seeing for back end, like retail market So like if you're selling your flip, what are you expecting to see the buyers coming in with? What type of financing? Is FHA still popular, conventional? Like where are we at in the marketplace with that type of stuff?
I guess it all depends on the market and the price point. I think in the lower end price point, some of these government subsidized loans are still semi-common, but they better be conventional. They better be conventional or cash. I mean, unless it's the only one you got. Dealing with the FHA and the VA, it's like you have that second, everyone knows, you have that second inspection. It's like those lender inspections. They're doing the safety stuff. They're flagging dumb bullshit. Hey, there's a flake and paint on that handrail. Let's slow the whole thing down. So those are tough to deal with. And then, of course, as RJ mentioned, the appraisal sticks for that 6 months. So the thing is, luckily, in this market, we're getting a lot of offers. So we get to kind of pick and choose. And what a good agent's going to do is make sure that their sellers understands all the aspects of each one of these types of financing. Now, VA and FHA are fine loans. I'm not here just to beat them up. But if you're comparing it to something that might be a little less invasive, that's what you're looking for.
Would you say there's a delta? Like, let's say I'm selling a house and someone comes in, they're conventional buyer, but they're $5,000 less than FHA buyer. Would you necessarily push your seller to maybe take that conventional financing because it's a little cleaner process?
Yeah, there's a couple of key elements here. Now, all offers aren't the same with purchase price or the financing. And I get the question is like, what is the delta? What is the value between a conventional versus an FHA? The caveat to this is, how did that offer come over? Did RJ send it to me? Is it in one PDF? I got the pre-approval, the proof of funds, super clean. It's all done. That's got value. That potentially has more value than the type of financing, to be honest with you. Am I working with someone who knows how to get this job done? Because we get it every day. I get an offer and say it's great. Conventional, over asking price. They send me 16 PDFs. I'm trying to call them. They're not answering the phone. That's strike 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
I don't care what this number is. That'll drive somebody crazy. And in Baltimore, there's the 80-20 rule across everything. 80% of the volume is done by 20% of the agents. It's almost like 90-10 around here. So, the relationships are super important. But with gun to my head, the value, the difference, I think it probably would be worth the $5K. Everything else being equal in a vacuum, I'd take a $5K less on a conventional deal, especially if in this market you're probably already pushing the ceiling up pretty high. Because that means we're going to be able to work with the appraisal. I'll know the mortgage broker. Even if it doesn't appraise, I'll call the lender. Hey, dude, let's flip it to another lender real quick. Just order another appraisal. We don't even need to fight this. I'm not going to waste my time. Get it back. Let's get it approved.
Yeah. So, and especially now as things are hot. I mean, what happens when the market like this happens. There's more real estate agents that, hey, I can become a realtor. There's more real estate investors. Oh, real estate investing is in the news. It's hot. Let's become a real estate investor. And unfortunately, there's not a huge path of resistance in order to get in. The barrier of entry is not all that hard to get into this space. What is hard is to become successful, right? It's easy to be successful. It's easy to become a real estate investor or maybe even real estate agent. But the hard part is to be successful with it. RJ, this one's for you. So what I've noticed recently is a lot of real estate investors, they've been, I don't want to say that real estate investors have been overpaying for properties. I think on the front end, it looks like you might be overpaying for a property, but on the back end, it's selling for, above what today's value is. So you look like a hero. But in general, I feel like a lot of people, their margins are thin and they're doing whatever they can. And I've noticed that some of them don't believe that if they do a full gut renovation, they're going to be able to get all that money back out of it. So I've noticed that a lot of folks will just do nice lipstick jobs, right? They'll clean it up. They'll make it look nice. They'll try to compete with a nice fully renovated house. I'm not stating they can compete with it, but that's kind of what they're trying to do because they don't want to spend $100,000 because they can't spend $100,000 on the deal. They want to spend significantly less than that. What do you, if somebody's in that position, and I'm not here to say that that's, a bad business model, but let's say somebody wants to do that. Like, what would you say are some guaranteed must-haves, must-dos in that lipstick project in order to try to push to sell at top dollar?
Well, I think, it's going to depend on the property, right? So that's first and foremost. But, you're never going to go wrong on kitchens and bathrooms. right? So that's where you're going to be wowed when the buyer walks through the door. I think you need to have recessed lighting in a property. I think you need to have an open floor plan. So if there's, anything I can recommend is if you can open up the space by taking down a wall or two inside the property, I think your return on your investment is well there. And then I would say go into the kitchens and bathrooms. Main floor living space, living room, dining room, kitchen, granite, stainless steel. Those are where you're going to get your most bang for your buck. I think hardwood floors is a nice touch. If there's an opportunity to refinish the hardwood floors or lay hardwood floors down, I think that's the lipstick that you were talking about. Not necessarily do you need to go and replace the HVAC. So instead of paying $8,000 to put a new HVAC in, maybe you spend $8,000 in the kitchen instead.
Yeah, because that gap between, a fully renovated house and a nice livable house, in a market like this, and depending on if you're in the suburbs or depending on what part of the city you're in, but that could be minimal. In normal markets, it could be major, right? And I don't know if DC is like this right now, but maybe back 2 years ago, between 1.5 to 6 years back, as we were doing lending a lot of stuff in DC, people would take a crappy renovated house and they would just tear the damn thing down and re-renovate it, right? Because there was just such a huge value add component to it. But I think right now, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems that you can be a nice, a beautiful macked out renovated house or just a nice livable house, and there's not a humongous gap.
Yeah, but that's the thing right now. Like, I think the two single family guys more than Jim could comment to this is that right now you can take a picture of a turned house and make it look great online, and then when someone shows up, they're like, "Oh crap, what's this?" Right? Like, and that's actually something I want to ask you guys real quick, and then Jim, I do have something about offering memorandums for you and your marketing. But guys, Andrew and RJ, like when it comes to pictures and marketing, like where can people find houses? Like, what's the best things to do to market your property? Or you guys handle this full service, and there's no need to do any of this, because in the end you are selling a product, you are selling someone's dream home, right? So what do you guys see in that in the way of marketing the property properly?
Go ahead, Andrew.
All right, well, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and you got it. When you're going to sell this house, you only get to sell it one time. You got to max it out. How are you going to stack the deck in your favor? And you have to take advantage of every single tool available to us. So one of the key things what we like to do is we want to get the house fully ready for us to get all of our collateral, have Studio A come in, get it looking real pretty. Hey, we're not even close to being on the market yet. Get it ready. Then we're going to do full-blown photos. There's no excuse not to have professional photos. Just like it's a couple $100 to do it right. The MLS now you can do as many photos as you want. It used to be just 30. Get the full spread, 70, 80, even if you're not going to use half of them. You get the full spread. And then here's the key. You have to make compelling video content that tells the story of this property that if you just looked at the pictures, you wouldn't have picked these two things up. Hey, the schools, what's going on in the neighborhood. This is what the owner loved about living here. Create some compelling content, 90 seconds, edit it, make it look cool. That's really important. Still not on the market. Then, as of I think a couple of years ago, you put it on as coming soon. Now you're targeting all the agents. All the agents know about this upcoming property, and you're taking that compelling content and targeting the public, people most likely to buy in this price range in this area with buyer profile targeting. You push all that into still not on the market, by the way. Now we're just coming soon. We're targeting everybody, and you want to stack that deck in your favor. There's no point in just letting it rack up days on market, even if the market's good. And by the way, it works 90% of the time doing it that way, because that's how everybody does it. Put a sign in the yard, take some pictures, pray to God someone sells it. And it'll work. But that's not how you're going to make sure you flip over every stone to make sure you unlock every piece of value from that property. You stack it up. Then by the time you're active, hopefully you already have some interest. When you have people beating down the door and they have to call the listing agent out of coming soon and they want to see the house, hey, we haven't even started really marketing this thing yet. I mean, maybe we can arrange a private showing. We're getting full price. There's no negotiating there. So I think that's really important. And and it always changes. Last piece on this. People say they do Facebook advertising and they do Instagram and LinkedIn and Google, and they do. This changes so fast. We have 2 full-time people. That's all they do is study it downstairs in our office. You know what's how much has changed on Google in the last 2 weeks? We stopped everything we were doing, went total 180 with these local service provider ads and stuff like that. If your agent doesn't know how to work their iPhone properly, that's not a good sign. If they're not super responsive and you can't communicate with them on every single platform, not a good sign. Your job as a marketer is to meet people where they are. And I don't care how good the market is. Your job is to open this funnel as wide as you can for your client's benefit. And I just don't see it happening that often. And I think it's one of the reasons, we didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago. Our team, the Sure Group, and we've been growing ever since, is because we take that real seriously. We spend a lot of money doing it. And the fact of the matter is it works.
Yeah, I mean, we're all marketers. That's the number one. That's the number one thing. I mean, listen, I don't know how many agents there are just in Baltimore, but thousands of agents just in Baltimore. People think, oh yeah, I'm a real estate agent. No, you're not. You're a marketer. We're all marketers. That's what you have to learn. Marketing is not like a side business. Like, oh, that's cool. You guys do some videos and you do some blog posts and you do some Facebook ads. That's nice. One day, maybe I'll get around to that. It's like, that's all it is. Like that's what it is. Like, hey, knowing, the logistics of selling a house, right? Like the transaction of selling a house, like that's right here. All the other stuff is over here. Like, and too many people, I believe, in every industry, and especially in real estate, they all want to just focus on the small transactional part, and they forget about the big stuff that got them to that.
Yeah, well, it's good about being a salesperson too. If your marketing's great and you're not good when they call, and your marketing starts working, well, you're just throwing money down the drain. Even more importantly is being a good salesperson, not conducting the transaction that everyone can do. Here's the 5 steps. You got to be a good salesperson, because if your mindset's not right and you don't know what to do, and you need to tell your seller when someone calls up your sign, you want me answering the phone. Otherwise, don't hire me if you don't want me. So I'm here to execute. We can hang out later and be friends, but you're calling me to execute on this, and I'm going to get it done. Because the only way you're going to say nice things about me on the internet and refer you is if I get it done.
Right. That's why Jim always carries a pen with him, so he can always sign contracts, right, Jim? But to actually take that into almost like an opposite direction. And guys, we're going to be finishing up here in a few minutes. So if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or you can find everyone's contact information over at reimadness.com. But Jim, it's almost like a little different. Like Andrew and RJ are casting this huge net, and they're targeting a way bigger audience than you are, where you're in this like commercial real estate over almost like a super niche market, and it's tiny really in Baltimore, comparatively speaking to what they do. How do you market your properties? Like, how can anyone even find a commercial property? Because I know it was like really unique to me, and I even knew you, right?
Yeah, well, I admire Andrew and RJ because I look at their marketing team, and you guys probably employ hundreds of people to put together your marketing team and your packages and everything. For us, I mean, in residential world, the houses show better with furniture and staging. I know RJ does an excellent job with his staging. Warehousing shows better vacant. You walk into a warehouse, it's clean, broom clean condition, and an owner user or an industrial guy can kind of visualize where they're going to park their fleet, where they're going to do their maintenance and everything. And for our brochures, it's very, very simple. A couple pictures from my cell phone, put together a 2-page brochure on crappy Microsoft Publisher, and a good chance we probably already know the buyer already, who it is, once we get the listing. So it is a small, tight-knit community in the commercial side. We put it on CoStar, which is a commercial database. There's LoopNet. There's a new one, Crexy. We've got like 9,000 plus people on our email blast, from attorneys to clients. So we do most of our marketing through our email. And I would say most of our business is through word of mouth. A good chance when we get the listing, we already know what type of buyer it is, and we're going to chase those guys right away.
Yeah, I find it interesting, like when we looked at Gaslight or Patapsco or any of these other deals that we've done together. I know a conversation me and you always had, or you've always prompted me to, who's the end user? What does this look like? And it's a little different than the single family world, because it's so obvious of like, I'm renting it or I'm selling it. Whereas like when we looked at Patapsco, like, yeah, we're gonna find an owner user, and they're gonna rent out all these bays, and we wound up selling it to a publicly traded company whose use is completely different than what we renovated the place for and probably overspent. So it is very interesting that that you show it vacant and you do take a few photos and you're over and done with. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jay.
RJ, let's wrap up this one question real quick. You can see that on your screen, right? From Tracy, recommended to stage a whole house or just the main space, living, dining, kitchen, things like that.
So those of you who don't know, my wife owns Studio A Staging. They stage Maryland, DC, Virginia, very accredited staging company. So her standard staging package is living room, dining room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. When it comes to the staging of the home at that point, I think Andrew would agree with me. At that point, the buyer should have a vision for the home, see how the space should be used. Now, in the event there is a unique space, the staging company will stage that space to show it as a children's playroom, a foosball table, as a rec room, pool table, whatever that may be. But I think, from a marketing standpoint, online, if you're getting 50, 60 photos, let's say maybe 40 photos, most likely by the first 20 photos online that the potential buyer is looking at, those photos grab their attention, and those are the stage photos. So 90% of the buyers find their house online these days. Like Andrew said, it's all about your marketing. You have to take the right steps, So with that being said, staging the whole house, I don't know. Every house is different. So, but normally by the time they get to 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, living room, dining room, kitchen, they should have a good feel for the home and how the space should be used. And you should have enough, content online for your marketing or your videos that your realtor has done to accentuate the property. So I always recommend, look, living room, dining room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Don't go over the 2 bedrooms. If there's a unique space, then have the staging company accentuate that space in the best light they possibly can at an extra or additional cost. But at that point, I think it should show its value.
30, 60 days, you think, or the whole time it's on the market?
So in this market, right, and I'm going to defer to Andrew, you get one opportunity to hit the market in its best light. You put your best foot forward, not go backwards, right? So in the first 30 days, if the house is not under contract, I don't think it has anything to do with the staging. I think it has everything to do with the price. Because if it's listed right, it's staged right, it's marketed right, you have the best agents working for you or on the listing side of things, you should have a offer. If it does not have a offer, I think it's price point. It's price point driven in this market. And Andrew, you can jump in.
Well, the question, do we stage it for 30 days or 60 days? I would almost lean towards 60. Everything RJ said is accurate. But if you want to take those steps and stack the deck in your favor and get this marketing going before you're active, I think it might be worth the extra, $600 or whatever. And then in terms of what room should you stage, again, RJ kind of nailed it. I defer to the stager to tell me that. Like when Amy comes from Studio A Staging, she'll tell you, hey, you don't need to do these rooms. Everyone gets this. Why don't you just do the kitchen and the bathroom? Well, they know better than me. I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not like super stager perfect. That's why you rely on the professionals. I stay in my lane. I know what I'm good at. It's creating buzz, negotiating the deal, and netting them money. But I'm going to use my tools, these little arrows in my quiver, to the greatest extent. And at the end of the day, our job is to provide advice and perspective. And if they listen to it, great. And if not, hey, we did our best. But it's your house. You're making all the decisions. My name's not even on this thing. The agent's name's not even on this paperwork or contract. So,
yep, I agree with you.
No, all good. Cool. Well, want to thank you guys, Andrew, Jim, RJ. I think this was a good hour. We've had about 1,000 views. We've had about 35, 40 people kind of in and out at the same time on here. So if you guys don't mind, hop on to this. People are going to continue, viewers are going to continue to watch, to ask questions kind of throughout. So if you see anybody on here, you want to answer their question, feel free to post your guys' direct contact information. Again, you can see all their contact at www.reimadness.com, but they'll put it in the comments section as well, so it stays kind of in the feed. Again, if you're watching this through my HMB's Facebook, Ian's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, some Facebook groups, there's about 10 channels that this thing's live on right now, and it's streaming on the REI Madness website. So if you want to watch a replay, just click on any of those feeds and they're evergreen. So again, there's a bunch of questions that have continued to come in. So if any of you guys want to answer those after the fact, we'll do so. And I appreciate it. Ian and I both appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you, guys.